Well, hi, and thanks for stopping by the Pellets and Pistons Airgun channel. Today we've got the HW80, the Weihrauch HW80 air rifle, and I don't know if you just noticed, but this thing buzzes like crazy. And if you've been watching my channel for any length of time, you probably know that I don't tolerate buzzing in my spring guns, so we're going to do something about that today. Today we're going to install a Vortek kit. This is a high output kit for the HW80. It incorporates a new spring guide, a new top hat, and also a spring sleeve. Now this will quiet that gun down quite a bit. I don't know if it'll increase the performance, because the performance of this rifle is pretty satisfying already. I'm getting about 1,002 feet per second with an 8.18 grain H&N Sport pellet. So that's pretty good performance. I don't know if this kit will be able to improve on that or not. We don't want to get too much more powerful, because we'll start breaking the sound barrier, and that's not going to help accuracy one bit. So I'm hoping to keep it right around 1,000 feet per second, or even a little lower wouldn't be a problem. But this is a high output kit, so I'm curious to see what we get. I'm going to post up some chronograph results for you right now, and that'll give you an idea on how it's performing before the kit's installed. But it's buzzing like heck, and I can't stand that, so we're going to fix it. One way or the other, we're going to get this thing quiet. One more time just to show you what that buzz sounds like. If I can pick up a pellet, that is. Picked up 2 pellets. These fat fingers and these little pellets make a lousy match. At any rate, I'm going to take my microphone and I'm going to put it right down next to the rifle. See if you can hear this. A little bit of buzz there. One more time just to make it a little more evident for you. Listen closely. You hear that? That's going to go away come hell or high water. Alright, so stick around. We're going to tear this thing apart, show you what it looks like inside, give you an idea how to do this tune. I'd highly recommend it for anybody that owns this rifle, or pretty much any other Weihrauch rifle. There's a tune kit available for most of the more common guns. So anyway, stick around. This ought to be fun. And thanks again for stopping by the Pellets and Pistons Airgun Show. Okay, so we're at the bench with the HW Model 80 air rifle, and we're going to disassemble it and install a Vortek High Output tune kit, which should eliminate any spring buzz that this gun's had, as well as increase the performance, or at least keep the performance right around where it should be. This gun's producing about 1,000 feet per second right now with an 8 grain pellet, and we're going to see what this kit does. We've already chronographed it. I'll put those numbers up for you right now. This is stock. This is what the gun's producing now without the kit, and then when we're done we'll chronograph it again and we'll put those numbers up as well for comparison. So without further ado, let's dig into this rifle. The first step will be to remove the stock. Okay, so you can see the mainspring, the trigger group, cocking shoe. Now what's nice about this job is I'm not going to replace the piston seal, so it's going to be a lot easier. I'm not going to have to remove the cocking linkage or the barrel in order to get the piston out. We're just going to remove the spring and go ahead and install the kit. First step to do that will be to drive out these pins on the side of the action to remove the trigger group. So we'll put it up on a couple of blocks. We'll see what we can do about getting the pins to slide out. They're usually not too tight on these guns, at least not that I've found. Now that trigger started to fall out, and when it did, it took the safety with it. You really got to pay attention to this, and I forgot to mention that. This safety can go flying across your room, and you can lose this little spring right here very easily. So make sure that you keep that captive when you drive out the pins. Something I didn't do on this one, but we got away with it. At any rate, once that's done, and those pins are removed, you'll be able to remove the trigger group as one unit, and we don't have to mess with that today. So we're going to set that aside, and it's time to take this over to the spring vise, where we're going to remove this piece right here. These can oftentimes be tight, so before we go to the vise, we're going to crank it into a regular bench vise, and we're going to loosen up this cap before we try to unscrew it. So let's move over to that bench and we'll continue. I found that a crescent wrench is just the right fit for the receiver tube where the trigger group goes in, and I'm going to use that as a lever to try to loosen up the end cap. Sometimes that takes a lot of force. And let's give it a shot and see what happens. There we go. Okay, so the receiver tube is loosened. We're going to back it off a few threads, and then we'll put it in a spring vise and finish the job, because I'm not sure exactly how much force is on this spring. Always use a spring vise when you're not sure of how much tension you're going to be dealing with. One of the ways you can check is, once you get it backed off quite a bit, you can put a screwdriver down into the slot. Oh, that's a little too far. Like so, and just gauge how much tension is on that spring. You know, I think I can probably get away with doing that by hand. I don't know. We'll use the vise just to play it safe. Okay, so the end cap has been removed. Now we can remove the spring and the spring guide. There's the reason for all your buzzing. The spring guide is very loose within the spring, and that always causes a lot of buzzing. So the new Vortek kit will eliminate that, because the spring guide is very tight within the spring, and there's also a sleeve for the spring to ride within, and that'll cancel out even more noise. Also included is some Vortek spring grease that we're going to install. There's also instructions included in case you haven't done it before, but it's very, very simple. This is the top hat. This is going to go in this way. This is the spring guide inside the spring tube. Now we're going to take that out of there. Actually, it looks like they greased it at the factory, so we may not have to take that out. Yeah, I'm looking down inside here, and there's some of the Vortek greases already on the spring. The spring guide's so tight that it's going to give me a hard time coming out, so I'm not even going to take it out. I'm just going to grease the visible portion of the spring, because I don't know if you can see this, but there's grease already on the spring down within this sleeve. And rather than force it apart, we're just going to leave it as is and go ahead and grease the exposed portion of the spring. You don't want to put too much on, but you also want to decrease any friction. And I say that's just about right there. You notice this grease is nice and sticky, so it stays on the spring. It doesn't get slung around as the gun's fired. We're going to apply some molybdenum grease, or moly grease as it's commonly called. You can pick this up even at auto parts stores. This is just conventional moly grease. It's in a mineral oil base, if I'm not mistaken. So you don't want to use it in the compression chamber, because if you do, you're going to have a problem with dieseling. But you can use it on the spring without any ill effects. Not on the spring, but on the spring components. And in this case, we want it on the top hat, where it's going to have to rotate as the spring compresses and decompresses. And we want it at the bottom of the spring guide for the same reason. Alright. This whole assembly just slides into the rifle. And then we'll go ahead and reinstall the end cap. I'm going to try to get it started here on the bench. I'm not sure I'll be able to do that, but let's give it a shot and see. You want to try to get it nice and centered. Push down. Let's see how tight that is. Yeah, that's too tight to do by hand. All we're going to do is slip and end up gouging something on the rifle. So back to the spring vise we go, and we'll get this sucker installed, and then we'll give it a couple of test shots and see how we made out. So hang on just a minute while we move over to the spring vise. Okay, so we took it to the spring vise, and we discovered that the new piston sleeve won't go inside the piston. And on closer inspection, I realized why, and it's just something I haven't seen on any other Weihrauch gun, but this piston has a sleeve already installed, which needs to be removed. I got it started off camera. It was a little bit tough to do. I used a sharp implement, and I kind of tapped it out via the slot in the piston until I got far enough out where I could grab a hold of it with a pair of pliers. And now we're just going to remove that and get rid of it. So that sleeve right there has to come out of the gun before you can install the new components. Okay, so we both learned something on that one. Back to the spring vise, and we'll complete this job. Now, you may or may not own a spring vise, and if you do, I'm not sure what kind of configuration you have. If you don't, I've seen some pretty ingenious clamping systems employed in order to break down and reassemble a spring piston air gun. So whatever method you use, you need to apply just a minimal amount of pressure on the rear end cap while trying to keep it centered, and then keep twisting until you feel the threads engaged. And once the threads are engaged, you can continue to twist it in about 5 or 6 full revolutions. And once you're there, you'll be able to take it out of your spring vise and finish the job by hand. In order to get the slot to line up with the slot in the receiver, the trigger group slot that is, you may need to apply some force like we did when we broke it apart. But other than that, the job is pretty much straightforward. Okay, so the slot is now lined up so the trigger group can get installed. But before you install that trigger, you have to reinstall the safety. Spring side first, drops into this hole right here. Make sure the spring goes in with it. It should be free to slide side to side. Next, the trigger group. When you reinstall the trigger on an HW rifle, you need to cock it first, and you do that by pushing down the top sear like so, and engaging the sear at the back. If you were to pull the trigger, it would fire, so we want to make sure we don't touch the trigger as we do the install. Like that. Okay, so the trigger is ready to go back in. That slides in like so. And as you get the back down, you want to depress your safety until the hole lines up. properly. Smaller pin goes to the rear. We'll put that one in first to help hold the safety in place. Smaller pin. Alright, got it started. Give it a couple of taps and we'll get the larger pin started as well. Trigger fire, but that's okay because it's already back in the gun. One thing you have to remember to do when you do reassemble these guns is before you try to cock the gun, you have to pull the trigger to disengage it. Alright. The HW80 is reassembled and ready for the stock. You know, I'm going to show you something else before we close this up. Something else you have to be concerned with Weihrauch guns when you disassemble a gun. I never thought to mention this. Right back here, on the back of the trigger group, is a little nut that can fall out. That's where your rear trigger guard screw engages, so you want to keep an eye on that. Make sure you don't lose it. I should have taken it out when we removed the gun from the stock, and I never thought about it, so I got lucky and it didn't fall out, but that doesn't mean you'll get lucky too. So try to remember this when you take apart the gun, and put that aside until it's time to reassemble. Okay, so the Vortek kit has been installed, and while it was on the bench I went ahead and dropped a scope on it. So now it's time for the big test. Just as a reminder, here's a clip of what it sounded like before we did the tune. And now let's see what it sounds like after we did the tune. Again, this is a Vortek High Output kit for a HW Model 80 rifle. Shot number one. We're putting that mic right back up near the stock, near the action like we did the first time. Whoa. Did you hear that? Not an ounce of buzz. It was perfectly clean, smooth, fast lock time. Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Let's do it again to make sure that wasn't a fluke. Shot number two. Well, to say I'm pleased would be an understatement, folks. This was an extreme success. Vortek, you did it again. You made a wonderful kit for a wonderful gun, and it completely transformed this rifle. As a celebration, we're going to go ahead and ring that bell. And I'm going to put the Coney numbers up right now for you, before and after. And I have no idea what those results are because I haven't Coneyed it yet. We're going to do that next. Ring that bell. Awesome. Awesome. Absolutely, thoroughly impressed. Well, there you have it, folks. That's the Vortek tune kit installed in a Weihrauch Model HW80, and I'd say it was an extreme success. I don't know about you, but I think that kit is worth every ounce of money, time, and effort to install it. And while I've got your attention, I just want to thank you so much for stopping by the Pellets and Pistons Airgun channel. If you haven't subscribed already, please think about doing that. Hit the bell if you'd like to be reminded of the next video, and by all means give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. Thanks so much, folks, and have a great day.